So again, next week, continuing, right? So last class we did some problems, right? So I don't know how many of you actually face any difficulties as such, but from what I understand is some of you felt little difficult in accessing the formulas, accessing, say, completing the basics, how to find the number of moles and stuff. Right? I think these are some problems which I guess would be the problems that you will be facing. Yeah, I think. Right. So just giving a quick recap on whatever it is, right? So number of number of moles n, we calculate it as the formula given mass.
Sir, are you sharing the screen, sir?
Oh, sorry. 1 second. Yeah, I think now it's fine, right? Okay, right. So the number of moles formula is given mass divided by the molar mass of the substance. This we already know, right? So we'll take some examples, right? Say if I tell you that I have, say, 200 grams of calcium hydroxide, or we'll take calcium carbonate. Wait, eraser. Right, I take 200 grams of calcium carbonate and I ask you how many number of moles of calcium carbonate are there. Can you calculate and tell me? Right. So guys, for this chapter, you have to know what are the atomic masses of all the elements. If you don't know that, even simplest of questions cannot be answered. Okay, right? So first things, whenever like number of moles we use in so many formulas. 0.2 moles. 0.2 moles or 2 moles? How is it 0.2? Okay.
2 moles. 2 moles.
Yeah, what is it, Mithun?
Sir, 2, sir, answer. 2 moles.
Yeah, we'll come to that. So anyways, so you have to know what are the atomic masses of all the elements present, right? If you don't know that, simplest of things you'll not be able to do, right? So calcium atomic number is 40, carbon is 12, oxygen is 16, I'm sorry. 16, right? So you have to calculate 40 plus 12 into 16 into 3. So you will find that the molecular mass of calcium carbonate is 100, right? Now use this formula, right? To find given mass is this given in the question, right? That is 200 divided by 100, which is very simple, right? So why am I telling you this is because now they will not in the questions, if they ask you to calculate the molarity or molality, right? They will not directly with the number of moles. They will give you only the given mass, some amount of mass is dissolved in some solvent, something like that only they'll give. So all you have to calculate is number of moles of solute, right? And you will be calculating with the help of this formula. Okay, and one more thing, guys, right? You are doing a problem or you're understanding a concept, right? If you do not understand something, please don't feel ashamed to ask any doubts. Be it stupid question, you don't know whether the question is stupid or a good question unless until you ask it, right? So people who are there online, people who are here, please make sure, sir, I didn't understand this, how this number came, how this formula came, why the unit is like this, any questions, or why the concept is like this, why not that, any kind of questions are welcome. Nobody is going to judge you. I am not going to judge you. Definitely your peers, even if they judge you, they will also actually going to get benefited, right? They don't ask their doubts, you ask their doubts, eventually you're going to clear their doubts also if you're going to ask your doubts, right? So please feel free, there is no judgments here, there is really nothing to feel ashamed, right? So from now on, whenever I take class, or whenever whoever is the faculty who takes class, please make sure that it is your responsibility to make the faculty know that you don't know. It is as simple as that. It is fine, right? If at all in front of people you are a little shy, after the class, please approach me and ask me your doubts. It's completely welcome. Right. Okay, fine. So last class, we did some problems on concentration terms, molality, mole fraction, mass percentage, percentage composition, and all that. Right. And at the end of the class, we went on to see a concept called as vapor pressure. Right. So can someone comment? What is vapor pressure? Yes, correct. Right. So we already saw this. If I can show you. Right. So you see, there is a liquid, right? And basically, see, I told you that every liquid has a natural tendency to go into vapor phase, right? Now, please understand, you have particles. If I take a liquid, you will have some particles on the surface, right? And you will have some particles on the bulk inside the liquid. Okay. Now, please understand, people, the particles which go to the vapor phase are the actually ones which are there at the surface, not the particles in the bulk. Right? Now, why, if you ask me, right, why is it? Because the surface particles, their energies are different when compared to the energies of the particles in the bulk. Right? So please understand that if I have a particle on the surface, it has more energy. Right? So obviously, if I have more energy, it can easily go into the vapor phase. Right? But the particles in the bulk, they don't have enough energy. Now, how they have different energies, we'll come to that question. We'll answer that question when I go for the chapter called the surface chemistry. Okay. Now, for now, please understand that surface particles are going to have more energy, and that is why they are able to go to the gaseous phase. And obviously, after that, there will be some equilibrium established between the liquid phase and the gaseous phase. And as he told, these vapor phase molecules are going to exert some pressure onto the surface of the liquid, and that pressure is what is called as your vapor pressure. Yes. Okay. Now, if I'm going to have a pure liquid, only that liquid is there, no problem. Right? Now, when I'm going to add some other liquid or some other solid, what happens? I have a pure liquid which is going to have some vapor pressure. Right? Say I am going to add a solid to that. What will happen to the vapor pressure? Obviously, it will change. Increase or decrease?
Decrease.
Decrease. Okay. Why? We added? Not exactly. This is not how you explain. How did we explain? Obviously, I'm going to have a decrease in vapor pressure. Okay, I understand. If I add a solid, it will come to the liquid later. I'm adding a solid. Say I have water, which is going to have some vapor pressure. I added NaCl salt to it. I will find that the vapor pressure has decreased. Why? Is the question. Now, as I told you, it is the surface particle which is going to the vapor phase. Is it not? Right. So what is going to happen if I'm going to have a liquid which is going to have some amount of vapor pressure? Vapor will be there. Now what is going to happen? These solid particles, some of the solid particles will come and occupy the surface. So what is happening? The tendency, or say the space available for the liquid particles to go to the vapor phase is decreasing. Or in other words, I can say the ability of the liquid to go to vapor phase is getting hindered by the presence of these solid particles. Right? So obviously the amount of liquid going to the vapor phase is getting decreased. Obviously, if the amount is getting decreased, the vapor pressure is also going to get decreased. As simple as that. Right? So this is how we explain. You tell that the solid particles will block some of the surface area, making sure that the amount of liquid going to the vapor phase is decreasing, and because of that the vapor pressure is also decreasing. This is exactly how we say it. Okay, fine. Now when I'm going to add two liquids together, right, when I'm going to add two volatile liquids or non-volatile, but in the first we'll take volatile liquids. Okay, so I'm going to add two volatile liquids. So initially when they are separated together, they will have some vapor pressure. Right? Now, when I'm going to mix them together, obviously whatever I initially had for the vapor pressures is not going to be there. Right? There can be increase or decrease depending on what type of liquids you're using. Right? So the increase or decrease, how much, that mathematics, the quantity, how much is the change in vapor pressure if I have two liquids mixed? That is given by what law? Raoult's law. So what is the statement for Raoult's law? Right. So what it says is this. Yeah. So this is exactly what you're talking about. Right. So this PA and PB, A and B are two liquids. Right. Now I mix them together. Right. Initially, okay, fine. Looking at the statement first. If I tell you the statement again, right, or if I can go into the book and show you that, where is it? Yeah. See, Raoult's law states that for a solution of two volatile liquids, right, the partial vapor pressure of each component, that means we know what is partial pressure. Partial pressure means for that one component, what is the pressure? See, okay, let me go into this. I have a mixture of gases with me. Okay, I have a vessel in which I have a mixture of gases. Okay, now how do I define partial pressure is the question. Right, now say I go to my notes. Okay, I'll have this space here. Say assume that I have some A, B, C, D, all these are the gases present. Okay, now what do you mean by this PA? PA is the partial pressure of A. What do you mean by this is, if I assume that B, C, D are not there, same amount of gas, say 2 liters of gas, 2 liters of A I took, 3 liters of B I took, some amount of C and D I took, doesn't matter, right? So the pressure exerted by A, assuming that the other three components are not there, what is that pressure? That pressure is what is called as partial pressure. Are you getting the point? Right? I have a mixture of gases, say n number of gases are there. If I want to talk about the partial pressure of one of the gas, what should I do? I should assume that no other gas is there, only that gas is there. How much is the pressure that gas is applying? That pressure is what is called as your partial pressure. Right, so you can look into this. Where is this? So they're telling the partial vapor pressure, because now I have two liquids. Both the liquids will be able to go to the vapor phase. Both the liquids will be able to exert vapor pressure. Right. So obviously I have two different gases in the vapor phase now, A and B. Right. That is why they're using the term partial vapor pressure. Okay, so for a solution of two volatile liquids, the partial vapor pressure of each component, partial pressure of A, for example, if I take, is directly proportional to its mole fraction in the liquid phase or in the solution. Right? That means how much mole fraction is the amount. Right? The amount of vapor pressure, the vapor pressure of a particular component is directly proportional to how much of that particular component is there in the solution. That's exactly what the law is saying, right? So now the amount you're talking about is basically the mole fraction, right? So if I look into it, so this is exactly what we looked right? So I think we wrote it here, right? So PA is directly proportional to XA. PA is the partial vapor pressure of A. It is directly proportional to XA, which is the mole fraction of A in liquid phase. Very, very important, in liquid phase. Right. Same way, partial pressure of B, PB, partial vapor pressure of B is what you have to tell. Right? Is directly proportional to the mole fraction of B in liquid phase. That is XB. Right? Again, to remove the proportionality sign, we introduced two things, PA naught and PB naught. What are these? Huh?
The vapor pressure of pure gases.
They are
Pure.
vapor pressure. What is special about them?
So they are pure, sir.
Correct, correct. So when I have the pure liquids, A and B separately, they will have some vapor pressure. That vapor pressure is what is PA naught and PB naught. We have mentioned it here. Pure liquid vapor pressure. When I have the pure liquid, what is the vapor pressure? That is what is PA naught and PB naught. Right? So if someone asks you what are the equations of Raoult's law, you have to tell these two. PA is equal to PA naught into XA. PB is equal to PB naught into XB. Right? And I can tell the total pressure will be PA plus PB. That also we can say. That comes from Dalton. I shouldn't have said it. Anyways, it comes from Dalton's law of partial pressures. What is the statement for Dalton's law of partial pressures? Right. So if I have a mixture of gases, the total pressure is equal to the sum of the individual partial pressures. We know what is partial pressure now, right? So I have to sum all the individual partial pressures of all the components, and if I sum it up, I am going to get the total pressure, and that's exactly what we are doing. Total pressure. We have two components A and B in vapor phase. That is A and B. The pressure due to them is PA plus PA and PB. Total pressure would be PA plus P. Right. Now, but Dalton's law of partial pressures, if I go to the mathematics of it, it will be a little different, right? So this is exactly what we saw, right? P1, that is partial pressure of one of the components, say the first component, will be equal to the total pressure into the mole fraction. Now, this mole fraction and the mole fraction we saw in Raoult's law are different. How are they different? Absolutely. There it is mentioned in Raoult's law. It is directly proportional to the mole fraction of that component in solution, in liquid phase. Here, in Dalton's law of partial pressure, we talk about the mole fractions of the gaseous phases. Right? So this Y1 and Y2 are basically mole fractions of 1 and 2 gases in vapor phase. Okay. Fine. So this is exactly what we saw, right? So we'll try to solve some problems on this now. Okay, right? So let me see if I have any problems. Yeah. It will be entirely different. No, say there is no connection at all, basically, right? The mole fraction in, say, for example, I have two components A and B, right? Say mole fraction of A in liquid phase is 0.5. Right? It need not be 0.5 in the gaseous phase. It can be 0.1, it can be 0.2, it can be 0. There is no connection at all. Right? It all depends on how much is going to the vapor phase. That again depends on the liquid, what type of liquid you have. If you have a more volatile liquid, there will be more amount of gaseous phase. If it is a less volatile liquid, less amount of gaseous phase. It all depends on the liquid. There is no connection as such between the mole fractions. Okay?
Sir?
Yeah.
Sir, can you explain the formula for partial pressure, sir? Dalton's theorem.
Can you repeat?
Can you explain that formula for the partial pressure, sir?
Sure. Dalton's law of partial pressures.
No, sir, can you just explain that formula alone, sir?
Okay, sure. So here, this is the formula for Dalton's law of partial pressures. Okay, so this P1 is what is the partial pressure of the first component, 1. That is equal to PT is the total pressure. How will you calculate total pressure? By adding the individual partial pressures. P total is the total pressure and Y1 is the mole fraction of that component in gaseous phase. That's it. Same way P2, partial pressure of 2 will be equal to total pressure into Y2. Y2 is the mole fraction of that component 2 in gaseous phase. Yes? Okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Right. So we are looking for some problems. Look into it. Yeah. Okay. I think first itself I should not be doing relative learning. Okay, fine. We'll try to solve this only. Okay. I hope it's visible. Or a little more you want to zoom? This is fine? Okay, right. So I will please look at the question. The vapor pressure of pure liquids A and B. What are the values given now? PA naught and PB naught is given. Right? Pure liquid vapor pressures respectively this much at some temperature 350 Kelvin. Right? Now what they are telling is find out the composition of the liquid mixture. What do you mean by composition of the liquid mixture? When I say composition of the liquid mixture, how much amount of one liquid, how much amount of the second liquid is what they're asking. Right? So basically I have two things A and B. How much amount of A is there, how much amount of B is there in that particular solution. Right? So whenever vapor pressure problems are given to you and they're asking you chemical composition, basically they're asking you what are the mole fractions of A and B in liquid phases. That's what they're asking. Understood? Right? So basically find out the composition of the liquid mixture means find out the mole fraction of A and mole fraction of B in liquid phase. I mentioned. Find out the composition of the liquid mixture. I'll talk about only the liquid phase. Right? If the total vapor pressure is 600, they're giving you what? T total is given. Right? Now they're also asking you also find the composition of the vapor phase. They're asking me how much amount of vapors are also present. How much amount of vapors of A, how much amount of vapors of B. Again, amount, when it comes to vapor pressure, it's all about mole fraction. Okay, think about it. Use the formulas and try to get the answer. I'll give you some time. Please do it. Slowly. Think about it. See what is given. See what is asked. And try to apply the formulas. Only two formulas. One for Raoult's law. We'll come back to this later. Vapor phase later. Don't worry about it. Right? First talk about the liquid phase. That means you have to use only Raoult's law. Because mole fractions are asked in liquid phase. Definitely have to go for Raoult's law. Now for the second one, that is mole fractions in gaseous phase. For that I have to go for Dalton's law of partial pressures. Think about it. So if I can write the formulas for you, PA is equal to PA naught XA, PB equal to PB naught XB, P total is equal to PA plus P. These three are the formulas which I have to use for now. Now there is one more thing. There are only two components. So if I know the mole fraction of one of the component, I already know what is the mole fraction of the other component. Is it not? XA if I know, XB will be equal to 1 minus XA.
1 minus.
Right? Now if I just combine these two formulas, how can I write? P total is equal to PA naught XA plus PB naught XB. I can write it like this. PA plus PB, which is PA naught XA plus PB naught XB. Now see, look at here. Okay, fine. You try. Let me extend. Yeah, are you talking? Yeah, tell me.
The mole fraction of B is 0.6
Okay.
and A is 0.4.
A is 0.4. Okay, fine. We'll check the answer. Okay. I hope everybody is trying online also. Okay, now you have to just. That's what one more answer came. Oh, hopefully it's correct. Right. Okay. Now please guys, if you look at this, I already know a formula connecting XA and XB. Right. So in this equation, I already know what is the total pressure given in the question. That is how much? 600 mm of Hg. Right. PA naught is given. PB naught is given. Right. So, but I have two unknowns in one equation. So that may not be able to solve it using mathematics. So if you can have one equation, one unknown, then we'll be able to solve. Isn't it? Right. So I, instead of writing it like this, I can write it like P total is equal to PA naught XA plus PB naught into 1 minus XA. That's it. Now we got the equation only one unknown. The only unknown what I have here is XA. All the data are given to you. P total is 600, PA naught is 450, PB naught is 700, right? So now I think you should be getting the answer. Let me check whether you're getting 0.4 and 0.6. Yeah, 0.4 XA, 0.6 XA. Absolutely fine. Right. Okay. Now we'll not go into this. Now we have understood what is the. Guys, everybody understood? Please tell me yes.
Sir, one doubt, sir.
Yeah, tell me.
Sir, so the mole fraction of two components will be equal to 1 always.
If the instead of two components?
No, sir. The mole fraction of two components will always be equal to 1, sir.
Yes, the sum of the mole fraction of, if I have only two components in the mixture, the sum of the mole fractions of these two components is always 1. Always. Okay? Okay, I hope it's fine. Right, fine. So now we understood what are the mole fractions in liquid phase. Now try to apply Dalton's law to find out the second one. Also, find the mole fraction of the components in gaseous phase. Go for it. So if I have to write the formula, I'll write it here. P1 or PA we write. Same, they are talking about the same system only, no, A and B in vapor phase, that's it. right? So PA will be equal to P total into YA, PB will be equal to P total into YB. Now PA, P total, everything is same as we used in the previous case. Mole fraction cannot be greater than
Sir,
yes, tell me both are 0.5 kana. What's your name? What is his name? Ashik. 0.5 and 0.5. Okay, what is your answer, Kana? Here,
0.3 and 0.7.
okay, one answer I'm getting is 0.3 and 0.7. Okay, fine, we'll see what is the answer. Now, before you even move on to this thing, you have to first find out what is PA. Is it not? Right? We know total pressure. We don't know this YA and YB. We don't know this PA also. How will you find out? For that only you have to use Raoult's law again. Is it not? You look at this. PA is equal to PA naught and XA. We know what is PA naught. We calculated what is XA. Right? We can easily find out what is PA and PB and substitute this here and here. If juice kudichom right?
Sir, it's 0.3 and 0.7.
0.3 and 0.7. Okay, we'll check. Two answers I got the same thing. We'll check, right? 0.7. Okay, I think the answer is right. Everybody's like the same answer, right? So I think the problem is very easy, right? First thing you calculated XA and XB using Raoult's law. And with the same Raoult's law, you have to calculate PA and PV also because we need that in the Dalton's law of partial pressure. Right? We know P total, which is given in the question. YA we have to find, that's the question. Right? PA we have to calculate again from the Raoult's law. PV also have to calculate from the Raoult's law. And substitute it, you will be able to get YA and YB, which are the mole fractions in gaseous phase. And you told me the answer to be 0.3 and 0.7. Yeah, 0.3 and 0.7. If it's 0.3, obviously it will be 0.7. Okay, right? Easy question. One more exactly same method will solve one. Yeah. Sorry? Yeah, please. Okay. We'll take this question. I hope it's visible. Yeah. Right. So vapor pressure of chloroform, that is CHCl3, and dichloromethane are 298 Kelvin or this much. Again, what is given? PA naught and PB naught. That is P for chloroform, P for dichloromethane is what is given. That is pure vapor pressures. Now what they are asking is calculate the vapor pressure of the solution. Prepared, that is P total is what they're asking. Vapor pressure of solution means total vapor pressure. Now, obviously, for total vapor pressure, we need to know what are the individual vapor pressures, PA and PB. We need to know, right? So, solution prepared by mixing this much amount of CHCl3 and this much amount of CH2Cl2. What are they doing? First, do that. Then you go for it.
So I have a doubt.
Yeah, tell me, Kanna.
How do we know it's pure vapor pressure, sir?
Sorry.
How do we know it's pure, sir? Pure vapor.
No, vapor pressure of chloroform and dichloromethane. They didn't tell it is getting mixed, isn't it? So if they don't give you that it is getting mixed, but see in the question they have mentioned solution, then definitely it is not pure vapor pressure. Is it not? But here they are not giving you anything regarding the mixing part. So vapor pressure of chloroform, vapor pressure of dichloromethane when they are alone, and that vapor pressure is this much. And obviously I know that is your pure vapor pressure. Is it okay?
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, your question. Temperature, obviously this vapor pressure will be temperature dependent, is it not? Say now if I'm going to increase the temperature, obviously what will happen? More amount of gas will go to, liquid will go to the vapor phase. No, we don't use it. But vapor pressure is measured at one constant temperature. That's the importance here. We should not be changing the temperature. That's the point. So if they ask you what is the vapor pressure of the solution, then you have to find the total vapor pressure. 35.5. You have to take 35.5. So for total pressure, first you have to find PA, PB, then find total pressure. What is it? Can we round it off? No, Kana. Now, if you see, if it was a competitive exam like JEE Mains, you're really welcome to that, do that. But if you're gonna round up in a board exam, they'll get marks for that. Okay, try to get the exact answer. So I think this involves a lot of calculations, I understand. But you can do the calculation later at home also. If you get the idea of how to do the problem, that's more efficient. See, don't double calculate mole fractions. If you calculate once, 1 minus that will give you the other one. Again, don't go by Na, Np divided by Na plus Np. Again, it will take a lot of calculation. Is it not? First, one mole fraction you find, 1 minus the other one will give you the other mole fraction. The calculation is very simple. Okay. So again, the same formulas. I think you're calculating is what I understand. I think it'll take a lot of calculation. I understand 25.5, 40, lot of calculations involved. Anyways, we'll see how to do it. Okay. So I basically have total pressure is what is asked, total vapor pressure. So for that I need to know what is PA and PB, right? So first I have to calculate this and this. PA will be, or instead of A and B, okay fine. Instead of A and B, we actually write chloroform and dichloromethane. It's better. Okay. Right. So okay. So P of CHCl3 plus P of CH2Cl2. Right, okay. So I know P of CHCl3 will be equal to, again, a mistake, P naught of CHCl3
3
plus
plus
X
into X CHCl.
doubts? Okay, fine. So X of CHCl3. Same way for P of CH2Cl2. We don't have to write it again. Okay, so fine. So I have to calculate this first. This value is given in the question. For CH2Cl3 it is given as 415 of Hg. Right. Now this we have to calculate, and we know how to calculate mole fraction. We already done so many problems. What is the formula? X of CHCl3 will be equal to number of moles of CHCl3 plus number of moles of, correct. CHCl3 plus number of moles of CH2Cl2. Okay, and we just saw, just starting at the class, how to calculate the number of moles, right? Number of moles of CHCl3 will be equal to, what is the given mass of CHCl3? CHCl3 is 25.5, that is the given mass. It's given here, 25.5. Divided by molecular mass would be 12 plus 13, how much? 119.5. Okay. That is the number of moles of CHCl3 given mass by molecular mass. Same way, number of moles of CH2Cl2 would be 40 divided by 95. Okay. Divided by 95. So substitute these two values here and here. You calculate what is mole fraction of chloroform. CHCl3, and once you know the mole fraction of chloroform, you already know what is the mole fraction of dichloromethane. That is 1 minus, again somewhere, 1 minus the mole fraction of CHCl3 will be the mole fraction of CH2Cl2. This also we know. So again, you can calculate the number of moles. From number of moles, go for mole fraction. That's it. So now if I go for the formula, that is P of CHCl3 is equal to P naught of CHCl, which is given in the question. X of CHCl is now calculated. Right? So same way I can do for CH2Cl2, which would be P naught of CH2Cl2 into X of CH2Cl2. Again, this can be calculated. What happened? Oh, okay, right. So this can be calculated, right? And this is given in the question, and this again we calculated by using this one. Okay, so that's it. Now I found out what is the partial vapor pressure of chloroform, what is the partial vapor pressure of CH2Cl2. Now total pressure is now calculated. Okay, I know it's little for a lot of calculation, but don't waste time in that. You can go home and do it. Okay, now look at the second part of the question. Find the mole fraction of each of the component in vapor phase. What law I have to use now? Dalton's law of vapor pressure. Sorry, let's now the partial pressure. Is it not? Because they're using the term vapor phase. Right? They're asking you what is YA and YB. This is exactly similar to the previous problem. Please do it and tell me the answer. At least get the idea of how to do the problem. Just go for it. Guys, I hope everybody understood online of how to do the first part. If there's anything, please
Sir, I
ask.
have a doubt.
Yeah, please tell me.
How is molar mass of CHCl2 95, sir?
Sorry.
85.
How is
sir.
molar mass of CH2Cl2 95?
Oh, I don't know. I just took the value which the student gave. If you can calculate, so how much you're getting?
I'm getting 84, sir.
84. Okay. See, the more
85, sir. Sorry, 85.
85.
85, sir.
Okay, 85. No problem. It's 85. Fine, no problem. No issues. Okay, so again, it's exactly like the previous question, how to calculate the mole fractions in vapor phase. Let me add a page. New note, huh? Sure. Okay, I have spacing. Good, no issues. Okay, so for Dalton's law of partial pressure, we know the formula. P of CH2Cl2, for example, will be equal to P total into Y. Again, why am I writing? Because it's in vapor phase or gaseous phase, right? Y of CH2Cl2. Again, you calculate one of them, please do not calculate the other one. 1 minus that will give you the answer. Question will show. Okay, right? So mole fraction of each component vapor phase. Now, from the previous calculations, we know what is this partial vapor pressure of CH2Cl2 we calculated, right? Total pressure again we calculated for the previous case. So the only thing which we don't know is this. And once you calculate this, chloroform's mole fraction in gaseous phase can also be found. Yes. Okay. Done. So Raoult's law, very easy. Raoult's law and Dalton's law, two formulas. Okay. I would say three formulas for Raoult's law. PA is equal to P naught XA, PB is equal to PB naught XB, P total is equal to PA plus PB. Dalton's law of partial pressure, P1 is equal to P total into Y1, P2 is equal to P total into Y2. That's it. 5 formulas. If you know, everything is your fingertips. Easily you'll be able to find. Obviously, you have to know what is the number of moles formula, what is mole fractions formula. Those are all concepts to come from behind. Okay, right? Cool. So I think we don't need to solve more questions on this. It's pure formula substitution. Other than this, no question can be asked from this area. Okay. So we'll move on. We'll move on to the notes. What happened? Okay. Right. So we understood what is Raoult's law, what is vapor pressure, how is it changing, all these things, everything is fine. Okay, fine. Now, with respect to this, what to say, Raoult's law, with respect to this vapor pressure, if I'm going to make a solution, right, there is this thing called as ideal solutions. Okay, right. So just how we have an ideal gas in your previous 11th class, right? So there are some assumptions, obviously, isn't it? You know kinetic theory of gases, right? So there are certain assumptions there. What are assumptions? Say the volume of the individual gas particles are negligible when compared to the volume of the whole container, right? Like this, I have 4 or 5 assumptions for an ideal gas. Same way, for an ideal solution, there are some conditions for the solution to be ideal. Perfect solution, we call it. Okay, fine. So for a solution to be ideal, what are all the conditions? First and foremost thing, it must follow Raoult's law. It must obey Raoult's law. Right? The first and foremost condition, that is three equations. PA is equal to PA naught into XA, PV is equal to PV naught into XB, P total is equal to PA plus PB. These 3 equations should be obeyed strictly by the solution. That is the first condition. Second condition is delta H mix is 0. Okay. Now what do you mean by this? Delta H mix means enthalpy of mixing. Okay. Say, now please understand. Okay. Say I have a liquid A, I have a liquid B. Say assume that liquid A has an enthalpy of say 100. Right? Liquid A has an enthalpy of 100. Right? Liquid B has an enthalpy of say 50. Right? Now if I'm going to make the solution AB, right, what will be the change in enthalpy if I mix? It should be 150. It should be 150, right? But if it is say 140, or say if it is what is 150, 160, right? Then what will happen? See, or I can write instead of delta H, right? Let me write it as H total. Okay, right? So enthalpy of A, pure A is 100, enthalpy of pure B is 50, right? And when I mix them together, what I expect is the total enthalpy is 150. What do you mean by enthalpy of mixing? Basically enthalpy before mixing, or say enthalpy after mixing minus enthalpy before mixing. Final minus initial always. Is it not? Now finally how much I have? 150. Initially how much I had? 150. Now 150 minus 150 will become 0. Okay. Again I repeat. After mixing 150. Before mixing individually they are there 100 plus 50 will become 150. So if I take the subtraction, you will be getting 0. If you are not getting this, if you are getting say 150 and here are getting 140, 160, some other value, then it is not an ideal solution. Okay, right. Third condition is del V mix is 0. That is, volume of mixing should be 0. Now how will I do it? Say same example we can take, right? Again I have A, B, AB, that is solute, solvent, solution. Okay, say I had 10 ml of A and 5 ml of B. What do I expect the total solution's volume? 15 ml. Right? So volume after mixing 15 ml, volume before mixing, again individually adding 15 ml, 15 minus 15 will become 0. But again, sometimes what will you understand? What will you see is it will be say greater than 15 or less than 15. If that happens, non-ideal solution. Okay, right. Now these are all the statements given in your book. Okay, like 3 conditions. Again, this condition is short question in your board exams. What are the conditions for a solution to be ideal? You should write all these 3 and also write the formulas for Raoult's law. 3 formulas which I told. That formulas also has to be written. Okay. Right. Now, I will be able to get these two things understood. Okay, we understood mathematically how it works. Right. I can even speak about it in terms of some attractive forces. Okay, let me speak about it. Right. Fine. Please understand, people. The attractive forces can be of two types. Okay. One are what are called as cohesive force. Okay. The other one is what is called as adhesive forces. Both are attractive forces only. Okay. Right. So first when I try to understand what do you mean by a cohesive force, what do you mean by an adhesive force. Okay, right. So cohesive force is a force existing between same type of substance. Say solute, solute, same type. That force existing between solute, solute, or between solvent, solvent is what is called as cohesive force. Between water, water, between ethanol, ethanol, what kind of interactions you have, that is what is called as cohesive forces. Okay, fine. Adhesive forces, now your Fevicol, your gums, all these are what are called as adhesives. You might have even seen in your dabba, like in your Fevicol dabba, they say it's adhesive. What's an adhesive? It is going to stick to different materials. Right? So it is interaction between different type of substance, right? So here I can, so in the case of cohesive force, I can write it as a like with respect to solution we are speaking, it can be solute, solute, or it can be solvent, solvent. Now here I can have only one thing, that is solute solvent interaction. Okay, right. Now, if I want the solution to be ideal, okay, if I want solution to be ideal, I can give you the fourth condition also, but you don't have to write this in the exam. This is just for your understanding. Right. So the fourth condition, as I said, you don't have to write it in the exam because it is a concept. From this only the other two which came, basically your Raoult's law also. Raoult's law, delta H mix is 0, delta V mix is 0, is all a consequence of what you're going to see now. Okay, right. So what I'm trying to tell is, for the fourth condition, for a solution to be ideal, is total cohesive force should be equal to the total adhesive force. As simple as that. Right? So initially, whatever be the amount of force existing between solute, solute and solute solvent, the sum of that, right, should be equal to the solute solvent force. That is your adhesive force. Okay? That if that happens, yes, it is going to be called as a ideal solution. Okay, right. Now we understood what we mean by ideal solution. Now we will try to understand the reality. Obviously, you will find very few solutions will be able to show ideality. Maximum number, majority of the solutions will show only non-ideality. What we'll understand the reasons, we'll understand how it happens, how they're able to show non-ideality, how they are deviating from the ideal behavior. Just like you have real gas and ideal gas. You know how real gas deviates from the ideal gas. Like that same thing we'll see here. Okay. Right. So okay, till now any questions? Any questions you have? People are online, any questions? Okay. I suppose there are no questions. Right. Yeah, tell me.
What is the, can you again say the difference between addition and coercive force.
You can even tell that, yeah, the difference between the adhesive and cohesive forces must be 0. Yes, you can tell it like that.
Okay.
Right? Yeah?
Okay.
Yes, yes, good. That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah. Okay. So now, when I go to non-ideal solutions, again, there can be of two types. Right? Non-ideal solutions again can be of two types. One showing positive deviation from Raoult's law. You can even write it. I'm writing R law. R represents Raoult's law. Okay. So one which shows positive deviation from Raoult's law, and second which shows negative deviation from Raoult's law. Negative deviation from Raoult's law. Now, very simple, guys. Very simple, right? So, if I look at the Raoult's law equation, we know three equations, right? Now, instead of an equal to sign, if I put like this, PA is greater than PA naught XA. If PB is greater than PB naught XB, and P total is greater than PA plus PB. These three are the conditions, and if at all you can even include your del H. So del H mix is greater than 0, del V mix is greater than 0. So you see, all are greater symbols. If all are greater symbols, then I go for positive deviation from Raoult's law. Okay, now these are all mathematical aspects of it. Let us try to understand logically what is happening. Okay, right. Now, for it to show positive deviation, what I understand is the vapor pressure is more than what I expect. That's what the equation says. I expect some vapor pressure, partial vapor pressure for A, but what I see in reality is I'm seeing more amount than what I expect. How will I be able to give a logical explanation to this? It's very simple. You want to tell? Anybody wants to comment? Okay. The clue is based on adhesive and cohesive forces. Cohesive forces are less. Yes, that makes sense. Now, please understand, people. Adhesive forces. Oh, cohesive forces are less. This should be opposite. Adhesive forces are less. Anyways, we'll come to this. Okay, it's all about cohesive and adhesive forces. Correct. I understand what you're trying to say. Yes. Okay. So, what do you mean by cohesive force? Cohesive force, I told you it is in solute, solvent. You cannot do anything much about it because they are by their own nature. Right. Now, when I'm going to mix them together, what I understand is the vapor pressures of A and B are increasing more than what they had in their pure vapor pressure. Is it not? PA, if I compare PA naught and PA, what I find here is see, PA is greater than PA naught. Is it not? So what I understand, when I had the pure liquid, that vapor pressure is less compared to the vapor pressure where I have now in the solution. Now, how is it possible? Obviously, if the interaction between the solute and solvent is very less, is it not? When the interaction when the attractive force between the solute and solvent is very less, then only is the liquid particle can go into the vapor phase. Yes, right? If the interaction, say, it's like if I have very strong attractive force, what will happen? A will be pulled by B to be staying in the liquid phase. But if B lets it go, what will happen? The A molecules will easily go to the vapor phase. So more amount of vapors, more amount of vapor pressure. That's exactly what you see here. Okay. So in other words, I can tell the other condition for positive deviation is the adhesive forces are lesser than the cohesive forces. Is it not? It's because obviously in cohesive forces, solute-solute, solvent-solvent interactions are so strong. That is why PA naught and PB naught are less. Hope you're able to understand what I'm trying to say. Right? The solute-solute, solvent-solvent interactions are very strong. That is why the liquid is finding it difficult to go to the vapor phase. Right? But once the solution is formed, the interaction between the solute and the solvent is not that strong, weaker than the previous case. So now the liquid particles of A and B are finding it easier to go to the vapor phase. So more amount of liquid will go to the vapor phase. So more amount of evaporation. Yes, I hope it makes sense to all of you in online as well as all of you here. Okay, now easily now you can predict what is going to happen in the negative deviation. Right? You can write the conditions, all the conditions, whatever we wrote like for positive deviation, please write. I also write. Right? So I can write that PA will be lesser than PA naught XA, PB will be lesser than PB naught XB, P total will be lesser than PA plus PB, then delta H mix will be less than 0, del B mix is less than 0, and at last it should be opposite. The cohesive forces should be lesser than the adhesive forces. Same analogy, same analogy. Now what happened? Initially, when only the pure liquids are there, solute-solute solvent interactions are very weak. And that is why what I see, PA naught and PB naught are greater. Because now the liquid, the pure liquid is easily going to the vapor phase. More amount of vapor, more evaporation. Right? But when the solution is formed, the solute-solvent interactions are very strong than the previous case. Now the liquid is finding it difficult to go to the vapor phase. Less amount of liquid will go to the vapor phase, so less vapor pressure. Yes, right? So the condition here for negative deviation related forces is adhesive forces are greater than the cohesive. Please mention it, or if you will definitely forget if you don't mention it there. Right? Done. Right. Fine. So we saw mathematically, we saw logically, how is it that the solution deviates from ideal behavior? Yes. Now we'll see the same thing in the form of a graph. Okay. Right?
So I have a doubt.
Yeah, Kana, tell me.
So sir, we can say cohesive forces are stronger than adhesive forces, sir, generally.
For negative deviation or positive deviation?
In positive, we can say generally, sir. I'm talking general aspect. Can we say?
General aspect, it depends again. See, for example, say, let me give you an example. Okay. Right. See, assume I have H2O and ethanol. Okay. I have H2O and ethanol I have. Okay. Now I know between, say I have solvent. These are the H2O is my solvent. Okay. So H2O, I know I'm going to have very strong hydrogen bonding. Correct? Right? So hydrogen bonding is the force which is talking about the cohesive force between two water molecules. What force exists? Hydrogen bonding. Right? Now hydrogen bonding exists in ethanol also. Okay? Now, but when you see, before mixing, H2O had a very strong hydrogen bonding. Ethanol, we will not be able to speak about it logically speaking. Right. So anyways, H2O before mixing had a very strong hydrogen bonding. Now when I'm going to mix together, the hydrogen bonding will be between H2O and C2H5OH, which is little weak compared to H2O. Yes, compared to H2O hydrogen bonding, H2O C2H5 hydrogen bonding is compared little weak. So what will happen now? It will show what kind of behavior, positive deviation or negative deviation. Positive deviation. Initially, the cohesive force, H2O is what? H2O is cohesive, which is strong. So the vapor pressure would be less. Right, now when I'm going to mix the liquids together, the interactions are becoming weaker. So now easily they'll go to the vapor phase, more vapor pressure. Right, so the answer to your question is, Rohan, it all depends on the what type of liquids you're using. Yes, I think this will make sense to you. Yes?
Yes, I understood.
Yeah, good. Right. Okay, right. So when I said you that we will be seeing the same thing of a graph. We'll see how it looks. Or I think I can show it from the book itself. Can I? Oh. Yeah. So look at this graph. Okay, so this is for an ideal gas, ideal solution. Okay, now see, this x-axis is the mole fraction. There are two components, 1 and 2, say A and B or whatever it is, right? Now you see in this case, x1 is 1, that is maximum, and x1 is 0. That means along this direction, x1 is decreasing. That's what you have to understand. Same way, look at this. Here, x2 is 1 and here x2 is 0. That means what? Along this direction now, concentration of 2 or mole fraction of 2 is increasing. No issues. Okay. For 1 it is decreasing from left to right or from left to right, and for 2 it is increasing from left to right. That's what is in the x-axis. And y-axis is vapor pressure that is given. Okay, now if you look at the equation for Raoult's law, PA is equal to PA naught into XA, right? So let me write it here. PA is equal to PA naught
into XA.
What happened, Dana?
Just set the formula.
Okay, right. So PA is equal to PA naught into XA, right? So this is in the y-axis, PA or the vapor pressure, right? And this is in the x-axis, correct? Right? So obviously, what do you expect? This is like y is equal to mx. Will obviously get a straight line, is it not? So if I plot a graph between the vapor pressure, partial vapor pressure, and the mole fraction, what should I be getting? I should be getting a straight line. Now look at this. Let me look for x2 first, that is PB or whatever it is. Now from this to this, the concentration or the mole fraction of 2 is increasing, right? So what should happen? You look at P2. This is the graph for P2. See, that is increasing. The vapor pressure is increasing again. Same way, look at for x1, that is for the component 1. This side it is increasing. That is, this side it is increasing, right? So obviously you see this is P1 graph. It's mentioned here. You see that's the P1 straight line. Okay. Now if I have to get the total pressure, and that is what is given by this straight line. P total is equal to P1 plus P2. All are coming from Raoult's law. We are not doing anything extra. Just from the equation, I can directly see that it is going to give me a straight line equation passing through the origin. Is it not? Because if I have y is equal to mx plus c, then I'll have some intercept. But this is just y is equal to mx, so definitely it is going to pass the origin. So you can see origin, it passes through the origin only. Okay, now this is for an ideal solution. Okay, let me see what is going to happen for a non-ideal solution. Again, non-ideal solutions have two types, positive deviation and negative deviation. So we'll see how the graph looks. Where are you? Yeah, got it. Look at this. Right. So now you see the green line which are given are the ideal solutions. Green. Wherever you see green, this one. Okay. Now the first graph which is given to you are looking at the graph and telling you what is it? Absolutely positive deviation, because you see this line is the line for P2. But what you expect? The vapor pressure has now increased. Is it not? The vapor pressure has now increased. So obviously it shows positive deviation. So now this curve you see here is the positive deviation curve for 2. And this curve, the other one, again, this is the expected vapor pressure. but what I see in reality is higher than that. So again, obviously, again, positive deviation. So again, the graph is like that. Even the P total graph is also like that. All are expected as expected from the equations you saw for positive and negative deviation. Right? Same way you see for negative deviation, the expected vapor pressure is, sorry, the observed vapor pressure is lesser than what I expect. You see, this is the vapor pressure expected, but it is lesser than that. Again, this is the vapor pressure expected, lesser than that. This is the vapor pressure total vapor pressure expected, and this is the what I see in reality. All are lesser than what are expected values. Negative deviation. Okay, right? So this graph is also very important. The condition, what are the type? First of all, what are the types of non-ideal solutions? How are they coming into the picture? What are the reasons for them to show non-ideality? And what are the conditions for positive deviation? What are the conditions for negative deviation? Along with the graph must be there on the fingertips. Okay. Now the last concept for today. I'll just take 5 more minutes and we'll wind up. Okay. Now the next concept is, depending on the non-ideal solutions only. Okay, we are going to look into this concept or the thing called as azeotropes. Please take down first. I'll give you the definition. Azeotropes. Okay. Azeotropes are liquid mixtures. Azeotropes are liquid mixtures which cannot be separated, by distillation. Azeotropes are liquid mixtures which cannot be separated by distillation. Okay, fine. So we already studied distillation in lower classes, is it not? Right? So distillation is what? What is the principle behind distillation? Size? No. Anybody here? What is it?
Temperature. It's the temperature difference.
Temperature? Can you be more specific? Yeah, difference in temperature. What temperature? I want a specific name.
Absolute.
No. Boiling point. What is the temperature talking about? The temperature talking about is the boiling point. Is it not? Say if I have to go back to the lower classes, what I have to do? Say I have a liquid mixture, say water and ethanol. Okay, I start heating it. Now what will happen? Now remember, boiling point of ethanol is 70 degrees Celsius and boiling point of water is 100 degrees Celsius. That we know, right? So now the first temperature will reach 70 degrees Celsius. So what will happen? I will collect the vapors. I have condenser and all stuff here. I'll cool the gas, right? So basically when I reach 70 degrees Celsius, the ethanol will go to the vapor phase. Right? Now that will come here, it will be cooled down with the help of condenser, basically ice cubes you can use, and eventually what I will be collecting here is only will be ethanol. Okay, and obviously water will be here. Right? This is what is called as distillation. Basically, the basic principle behind distillation is difference in boiling point of the two liquids. Right? The lower boiling liquid will easily go to the vapor phase and eventually calculate at the other end. The other liquid will stay this side only. This is what is there. Now look at the statement for azeotropes. What it says is, I have a liquid mixture, but if I use distillation, I will not be able to separate them. Right? Yeah, exactly. No, not same boiling point. No, yeah, negative or positive, we'll see that. Both things are possible. So what is going to happen here is, I have say H2O and ethanol, assume. Okay, H2O 100 degrees Celsius, for ethanol it is 70 degrees Celsius. Okay, Now, certain times at some concentration, at some ratios of H2O and C2H5OH, if you're going to mix, what is going to happen is they are going to behave as a new liquid by itself. In the sense that now instead of not having 70 degrees, not having 100 degrees, it is going to have a boiling point of its own, say 80 degrees Celsius. At 80 degrees Celsius, both water and ethanol will come as a vapor. Are you able to get the point what I'm saying? Right. So basically I have two liquids. I mix them. What I expect is a mixture. Right. But what I'm seeing in case of azeotrophs is two liquids mixed together. It is going to, let's say, behave as an entire different liquid with different boiling point. One boiling point. That's the point. Right. So we are, so even though I'm mixing two liquids, I don't see two different boiling points. That particular liquid, that particular mixture is going to behave as a single liquid with one single boiling point. And that is the reason why you are not able to use distillation for separating them. Okay, right? I hope it's clear for people who are online. If it's clear, yes, azeotrophs are mixtures which cannot be separated by distillation, because after mixing, they are going to show an entire different property. It is going to behave as if a new liquid is formed with its own properties, in the sense with its own boiling point. Okay, now this azeotrophs again can be of two types. Right, we'll finish with this. That's it. Okay, this azeotrophs will be of two types. What I have is what is called as maximum boiling azeotrophs, and other thing what I have is minimum boiling azeotrophs. Okay, maximum boiling azeotrophs and minimum boiling azeotroph. So we'll see what is maximum boiling, what is minimum boiling next class. Okay, it again comes from the non-ideality, right? So maybe you will be able to guess. I can tell you this: minimum boiling is the one which will show positive deviation from Raoult's law. I'll tell you how next class. You can just take it down. Whichever solution which shows positive deviation from Raoult's law will be a minimum boiling azeotroph, and whichever shows negative deviation from Raoult's law will be a maximum boiling azeotroph. So we'll see how is this happening next class. Any questions, guys? Any questions here? Any questions here?
So I have a doubt.
Yeah, please tell me.
So is it only the boiling point that's affected?
Yes, only the boiling point is affected.
Azeotrophs? Or yeah.
Nothing. Only the boiling point. That's the specialty of azeotrophs. Only the boiling point is affected. No chemical composition, no chemical changes, nothing. Still, water will be water, ethanol will be ethanol only. But that mixture is going to behave as an entire different liquid, the entire different boiling point. Yes. Okay. Okay. I suppose the doubt is clear.
Okay.
Thank you so much. You can leave.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.